gonna know it's the intro music. It makes no sense. We're gonna change the intro music.
And we're recording.
And hello and welcome to another episode of the Greater Meaning Podcast. As always, I am your host, Andrew, alongside my two co-hosts, Nathan.
Usually you introduce Josh before me.
No, it's normally always you. I'm the big banger at the end.
Josh always is that strong finish.
Okay, so when do we start recording?
And Josh!
Hello.
Professional. Very excited. We have Joseph Part 2.
You know, I don't intend to mess up every single time.
At this point, I just think you do it on purpose.
I really don't do it on purpose.
Just a very, synthetically fake.
Maybe I should stop playing Tetris.
While we're starting our podcast? Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Lock in.
Andrew, go ahead and turn your volume a little bit higher.
Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? Mm.
So, everybody, today's a monumental day in the podcast. We all have our own microphone now.
Yeah, I actually went out and finally got... Well, we had an extra mic for the entire time we've had the podcast. I just never went and got another stand for Nathan. So we've just been sharing one. And now I can sit comfortably. This is incredible. I'm very, very happy.
I've always had my own mic. That's why I've always sounded amazing.
All right, so let's get started.
Yeah.
We are concluding Abraham.
Yeah, we're always finishing Abraham. Honestly, it's a story that's never going to end. It's going to be with us through the entire journey. But in the last episode, before this one, that's Joseph Part 1, we learned about Joseph's challenging relationship with his brothers. Joseph was his father's favorite son, which caused his brothers to resent him. And despite this, Joseph had prophetic dreams from God, and then things took a turn for the worse when his brothers, in their jealousy and resentment over Joseph's, some would say gloating, ended up selling him into slavery by some passing by merchants and deceived his father Jacob into believing that he was killed by wild animals. We also spoke in the last episode over Judah and Tamar and that whole fun section. But in this episode, we're going to delve into Joseph's experiences in Egypt and see how divine providence and righteousness shaped his life. Joseph's story is truly a started from the bottom, now we're here story, if there ever was one in the Bible. You really can't get lower than where Joseph is at the beginning of this episide.
There needs to be a music video with Joseph being like, started from the bottom, now I'm here.
Dude, we didn't even touch...
It's not the energy of that song at all.
Oh, man. No, just wait till this new intro music. We got a lot of
Dude, the intro wouldn't be...
Well, how about we do...
Why do you keep saying that?
Let's just do a little bit of a sneak peek of what it could be, and let's just see what everybody...
It's gonna be at the beginning of every episode. This makes no sense. We're replacing the intro music that we've had, aren't we?
No, we're just gonna start from that one going forward, but it's not gonna be this one. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, because we record these episodes so much.
In other words, don't be fooled if you hear new intro music, because in the intro music you will hear, "This is the Greater Meaning Podcast." So if you hear that in the intro music, you're listening to the Greater Meaning Podcast. There's not going to be any more of
record the song. We're not putting the one you like.
No,
Here.
How about let's let the people decide.
No,
I'm not singing.
I'm not letting the people recite.
I don't know.
Here we go.
All right.
Welcome to the Greater Meaning Podcast. Where Bible stories come alive at last. Dive into your word, let your faith be cast. Join us on this journey, learning from the past.
All right, it's gonna be that, but a little bit more well produced.
It's literally exactly what you imagine. Josh sitting in a garage with a phone, recording those.
I did an acapella version, okay? I had no instruments with me, so acapella it was.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. But maybe we should get into the story. What do you guys think?
I don't even know what we're doing. Joseph?
Second part of Joseph's story. I mean, again, last episode we covered a little bit of Joseph, but remember we kind of split it in half with Joseph and then Judah and Tamar. So we're really coming back to Joseph being the central figure of our episode. And we join Joseph as he is sold into slavery and has found himself in a very favorable position as a slave in the Potiphar's house, the chief of
Potiphar.
I'm sorry. I have to, like, as we're talking about, we're talking about Joseph, and it's just interesting. I don't know what was going on through Moses's mind, because I mean, that's who we think is the author here, but what's going on through his mind to be like, I'm going to write the story of Joseph, and as he's writing the story of Joseph, it's like, oh, I forgot about these people. I forgot about Judah and Tamar, and just throws them into the story, just completely cuts in the middle of it, and just said, this is what, and so it was just, it was comical to just kind of see a random story being thrown in the middle of a story that has nothing really to do with the story that is being told.
I think that we kind of talked about a little bit that we were essentially Joseph being far away. There's two separate parts of the story now. You have Jacob and his other sons at home, and you have Joseph, who's going to be living many years alone in Egypt in slavery, experiencing a whole different.
Yeah, but if it was a story of all the other brothers, that would have been a different story. This is literally just Judah's story.
Yeah, because of the significance behind Judah and Tamar and the children that come, like Perez and his brother, like the line of which we get David, the line of which we get Jesus. It was a significant lineage. And remember, we talked a little bit about how Judah would take on the role as kind of like the favored son after the first three kind of all had issues, Reuben, Simeon,
that's
Levi.
true.
Reuben sleeping with his dad's concubine, Simeon and Levi, killing a whole city. And it's kind of like let's see what happened significantly during this time. And then it's kind of like a cutback. Like, meanwhile, in Egypt, we have Joseph. And Nathan, if you can actually read from us from Genesis chapter 39, verses 1 through 6, we'll kind of start it off to see the setting in which Joseph has found himself.
Genesis chapter 39.
Oh my gosh.
Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt.
And Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had put under his authority. So it was from the time that he made him from overseer of his house, and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate.
Thank you, Nathan.
Or can I not read? Now Joseph was
showing
handsome
us
in form and appearance. It's still a part of the verse.
Showing us how easily he could be replaced with just an audio.
And Potiphar.
Yeah.
You can't, because you can't go to actual verses.
Yeah,
you actually can.
Yeah, you can. It's incredible.
Well, the thing that I took away was that Joseph was handsome in form and appearance.
The one verse that you weren't supposed to read yet?
That's still in verse 6.
Oh, my bad. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, handsome boy. At this point, he's pretty young, and we'll see why later, but super handsome.
I mean, he's about
super successful.
What, 20, 22, 23, somewhere around there. Young, fit, strapping.
He was old, young.
Just ready to go.
I mean, virile.
Yeah.
One thing that was important to note, we see kind of a trend. He's a Hebrew. He's separate from his father and his brothers, but he's in Egypt, and it's the Lord that made him to prosper in everything that he did in his hands, and he found favor. And it didn't matter that he was a slave, kind of working his way up through the ladder of the hierarchy of society in Egypt. A foreign, strange land must have been very scary, because from what he was used to living, going into this gigantic empire, which would last and span thousands of years. We're not going to get too much. Me and Josh talked a lot about ancient Egypt, and we did a lot of. It's such a significant, empire into the Bible, and we're going to try because, there's a lot of learned people out there, and I'm not going to say that I know enough to really speak as an authority on ancient Egypt and its customs and its, society and slavery and all these other major themes. But these are things that are going to come up quite a bit, not just in Joseph's life, but in the Israelites' life in general. And we have to understand one thing, that slavery in ancient Egypt was the lowest of the low in the society. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious for a lot of people, but there was an opportunity, as you see here, to work your way. It was more of a servanthood. There was different types of slaves that you could kind of be.
Obviously, from the looks of it, Joseph was a pretty high top slave, like over there, being in charge of a whole house. To the point where we'll get into it with the whole wife thing.
He goes to show that if you're good looking, the whole world is handed to you on a platter.
Joseph is a slave under Potiphar. Potiphar is a person that is in. Potiphar was in charge.
As you can clearly see,
Joseph, slave.
Potiphar is in charge of Pharaoh's army.
Egypt?
I don't know enough. I don't know enough.
I'm sure Josh knows about ancient
You know
Egypt.
how many different ancient Egypts there were? Like, wasn't it?
There
like
was a lot of ancient Egypts.
There was like so many. If you Google the different eras of ancient Egypt, you're talking about thousands of different years.
Oh yeah,
I know that we are closer to Cleopatra than she was to the building of the Great Pyramid.
I mean, we're also. I don't have another cool fact like that. I was going to do something about the dinosaurs and
Were you looking for the ding on my? All my Apple products are on silence, my friend. That ding was from you or Josh.
That was my ding. It was my ding. I dinged.
Yeah.
I ding dong.
I never dinged. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Josh. I know you were trying to summarize something we just summarized.
No, I was just we were kind of going a little bit off topic. I was just kind of trying to summarize this little thing that you had going for you over there. Just saying that Joseph was a really good worker. He was a slave under Potiphar, ended up becoming the top slave, being in charge of the whole house. That's a lot of trust. That's a lot of trust for somebody to have as into one of their slaves. So,
I mean, his master didn't even pay attention to anything else that happened in his house except for what he ate. Like, he literally was like, you take care of it. It's fine. I'm going to go do my job and all the affairs of my house, my finances, my household duties, my wife's needs. You take care of all that. You just go ahead and do that for me. But yeah, ancient Egypt, that was kind of like, you would think it's not allowed because why would a slave be given that much, authority or that type of position? And it just goes to show just the level of blessed, the level of like prosperity that God gave him.
Did we read number 7 yet? Verse 7?
No, I wanted to read that.
Just go ahead and read it.
Yeah, because this is what I'm waiting for.
After these things, that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, lie with me. I did it on purpose. It says lie with me.
I know.
She wanted him to lie.
Lie to me. Lie to me. Tell me something that's not true.
Yes. I cannot be dishonest. I cut down the cherry tree. That's George Washington. That's another fact.
I thought it was Abraham Lincoln.
No, that's
I cannot tell a lie.
No, that's George Washington. I
I'm
cannot tell a lie.
I'm almost positive.
It's not Abraham.
No, it was George Washington.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Oh no, it's Abraham Lincoln.
Stop
Oh
reading
wait,
the Bible.
It's one of them.
Tell a lie.
Yes, George Washington.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why I always thought, because he's called Honest Abe. I'm not just making this up. It's a thing.
Abraham Lincoln was a championship wrestler.
Why are we talking about the presidents?
I'm just
Theodore
telling you,
Roosevelt was the first man to
the dude
bring
was a
karate and jujitsu into the White House.
Man, we are on it today. I think this is our best.
The teddy bear was named after Theodore Roosevelt because Theodore Roosevelt would love to be out into the wilderness and love to go hunting, love to go hiking. He almost died actually one time on a hike in Africa. He went on a hike in Africa.
Saved our natural forests.
Now let's get back to Joseph. The chick wanted to sleep with him, the master's wife.
Yeah, the master's wife, the only thing we know from Potiphar right now is that he's extremely absent. And when you have a wife who needs things and you're just absent, she's going to start looking around.
But not only that,
next best thing. And
she sees Joseph, and Joseph is being like this man, right? He's in charge of all the other slaves. He's in charge of making sure everything is good, everything is great. He's basically, I'm not saying like treating her as a wife, but he's taking care of all of their needs. So from her point of view, she's like, it's just natural. She's looking at him and she sees kind of, subconsciously like a husband figure, you know? So of course she's probably trying, and he's good looking. Don't forget that he's good looking. So of course that's just going to come into play, and she's going to want to sleep with him, which she wanted to sleep with him.
I don't know why I put down on my notes Potiphar's wife was trying to trap Joseph in a sex trap, but I don't know if it was a trap. And I did a little bit of research to try to see, like, was it
It's a trap.
Was it normal for, you know, slave owners in ancient Egypt to just because Joshua, you kind of like, we talked about this a little bit, and you were talking about how Joseph finds himself in this really precarious predicament where he is a slave. He is supposed to obey his masters, but it comes to a point where he's asked to decide whether his obedience to his masters is supposed to overrule his desire to stay righteous and pure before God. And that's kind of the way we see Joseph respond whenever he's confronted by her. It's not once that she comes to him. It's kind of like she keeps coming to him and asking him, lie with me, you know, and he said, no, you know, how could I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Like he attributes the fact that it would be a sin against God higher than anything else. And would that be punishable? Like him, even if he was justified, could she have like punished him other than just scorn him? Because
I don't think she could have done anything. I don't think she could have done really anything to him. The thing is, women, especially in that time, women really did not have much power. They belong to their husband, so they can tell their husband, hey, this guy did something, but she can't really go to her husband and say, hey, I want this guy to sleep with me. He didn't want to sleep with me. Her husband's just going to be like, well, too bad, get your game better or whatever. Like, I don't know. Or either be really upset or either try to kill his wife or kill Joseph. And I have an interesting story on this exact subject about it's an Egyptian story about I guess two brothers, which happened kind of in the same time that theoretically this all could have been taking place in history.
Well, before you go into that story, do you have an estimated time in ancient Egypt where a lot of people, because we don't have a whole lot of proof around the time and the people and the events of this story that correlate with what we know from ancient Egypt, which is obviously we don't know a lot archaeologically or, you know, historically, but there are some ideas as to what time in ancient Egypt this story could have like coincided with.
I'm anywhere between 1000 BCE to 2000 BCE.
That's a pretty wide. That's pretty.
It's
around 1,000 years span.
It happened in biblical time.
I think from somewhere I read it was like somewhere between the 16th century or the 18th century BC time period. So that's
the 16th to 18th isn't broad.
I mean, it's not as broad as like, you know, 1,000 years, but I think it was like the second period. I'm not again. Well,
what kind of throws this off for me a little bit, because complex. in the Mernptah stele, I guess it's an Egyptian artifact that was found talking about some city states that were conquered by this pharaoh. And this pharaoh, it's the earliest reference to Israel But it's the earliest reference to Israel in Egyptian history, which is about 1205 BCE.
Oh, no, that's not. Sorry, it's a little bit newer. That would have been the late period. Sorry, I'm trying to equate the time periods. You said 12 BCE?
Yeah, 1205. Yeah, 1200 BCE.
It doesn't matter.
Either way, but
sorry,
the thing is, Egypt apparently conquers this city-state in 1200 BCE, and in that city-state, Israel is mentioned. And Israel is mentioned as one of the nations that doesn't have a king. See, with Egypt, everything is basically hieroglyphs. And they had a certain sign for different cities. And normally in other cities and nations, they always had kings. But at that time, Israel did not have a king. So Israel is just kind of portrayed as this nation without a ruler, just these foreign people from a foreign land. But for some reason, it says that they were wiped out, like completely wiped out by that conquering Pharaoh.
If anything, there was too many kings. Like, they were so quick to call someone a king. Like, you have one little city-state, and they were calling you a king. And, like, you're right. But at this point, Israel didn't have I don't think they had as many. They definitely had a lot of people to definitely be called a tribe, but they would be passing through and then...
Yeah, but what if it wasn't just Israel? What if it wasn't just Israel? What if this was like Esau's clan or Ishmael's clan, right? Because they were all considered theoretically like they were all Hebrews, right? It wasn't just Israel that there were Hebrews. You had different children. Nahor, right? The children of Nahor went a different direction. Ishmael went a different direction. Esau went a different direction. All these different kids went different directions. And Israel, which is Jacob, they were one clan.
I know that the earliest mention of the word or Hebrew that I remember seeing in the Bible was whenever Lot gets captured and one of them escapes, when the War of the Five Kings, and he runs back and he went to see the Hebrew by the terebinth tree of Mamre, and it was like,
wait, the what?
The Hebrew by
not that part.
Oh, dude, we're about to. Oh. Don't worry. In this episode, we're about to get into trees like you've never heard before.
Trees are about to be the main theme of
the word Hebrew originally meant like wanderer or nomad, and that's something that Abraham would do. And that's from my quick reminder Google search.
No, you're right.
Google fast. But the wanderer by the word, I mean, so it could have. You're right. That name could have encompassed a whole bunch of different things back then, before it was like strictly adopted by Jacob and his tribe, and then eventually they went to Egypt. And it's interesting because you see a lot of stories that people equate. They've been trying to find remnants of Israel and Egypt and Joseph in Egypt, and there's different characters, and there are some that might have more that are closer to others that could possibly be a good fit, but there's a lot of stuff that also disproves. So we're not really going to get too much into those as well as just telling the story, because we could spend all day just talking about the different like mythologies, legends.
Well, yeah, but I think that has
for sure.
When you try to find evidence of something, you have to look at everything else. It's basically a process of elimination. If you don't know the other things, it doesn't make sense to just close your eyes to everything else and look at only one thing and then think that is the truth. What if that thing in front of you is lying to you the whole time? The point is not to be. But you don't want to be oblivious and completely ignorant to other. Not saying other beliefs, but to history in itself, because this is what a lot of this is. It's history. So if you're not looking at history and trying to match it up with the Bible, then you really, you don't. I'm not going to lie. In my belief, you don't have much a foundation to stand on.
I mean, I understand. It's hard to just say you should try to fit things into something. I think that proof stands for itself, and when you find evidence, there is a lot of good evidence archaeologically that we find for.
Yes, but you know how they found those archaeological.
You shouldn't try to just bend it to fit it. I feel like it should be.
No. I'm not saying bend it to fit it. I'm saying that. Well, first off, almost every major archaeological find was because of the use of the Bible. I'm not saying the Bible that we have. I'm saying the Word of God. Let's be clear about that. The Word of God. So you have different texts, even extra biblical texts. You have the Quran. You have the Torah. You have texts like those that lead people to go out and try to find the truth, and they find it, and guess where it is? It's in the ground. And then that's
Josh,
what
did you just
leads
inadvertently
to
call the Quran, the Word of God.
to an extent. I'm saying, you get what I'm
okay.
trying to say with that.
You're trying to say that religious texts have often, and stories and mythologies have left archaeologists to like search for certain things,
Exactly.
in certain areas that led to actual archaeological discoveries. You're right. I would say instead of using Word of God, I would say more of like mythologies, stories, legends, things of that nature that lead archaeologists down through a cultural discovery of like trying to find artifacts that align with stories that are told. So, and it even goes back to like Plato and his descriptions of Atlantis and how people are trying to find it based on the few tidbits he gives us from like, his writings to say like, oh, this is what it looked like. It was surrounded by water and blah, blah, blah. And you're right. Things like that. It's just, we got to be careful with calling it like the Word of God. You know what I mean? But you're right. And people that search for things using the Bible or using other religious texts will find it. Not to get too far.
Speaking of Joseph and the lady,
that's what I was saying. Not trying to
him.
get too far away from the story. It's just we had to take a pause there to kind of discuss. He's in Egypt, and I'm going to try to do a little bit more of a breakdown of Egypt when we get to Moses.
What mythologies were there in ancient Egypt? I'm just playing.
No, because I want to talk about the mythologies of this exact scenario that's kind of going on. So if you can read a little bit more.
Why can't he say the two? Oh, I'll read. All right. Well, how much do you want me to read?
I don't know. Josh has a thing now. I have my own little breakdown.
Well, just finish what's going on with the whole one.
Read up to 7:15. Read up to 15.
That's not all of it.
Okay. Read the entire chapter, Nathan.
Really? Let me just finish it off. Guys, this is going to be a speed read brought to you by Nathan.
Oh my God.
Sponsored by nothing. I don't have a sponsor yet. But I will. Okay. Lie with me. But he refused, and he said to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. But then, can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he did not heed her, to lie with her or to be with her. But it happened about this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And so it was, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside." So she kept his garment with her until his masters came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me. So it happened as I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled outside." Kind of a repeat of what she just said to the people.
Yeah, I think that for now we should. I mean, rather than just speed reading and not really covering the story,
that really bothered you, but I was almost finished.
We could just tell what's happening. He doesn't do it. Runs outside. She grabs his garment and then lies about it because she was spurned and she's resentful of that.
But the whole point of this is to get to the end. So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, "Your servant did to me after this manner," that his anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners who were in prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper.
Okay, yeah, it's going a little too further, because now we're already talking about him in prison, but it's fine. Nobody probably caught that because just reading it so fast. It's like there's a reason for stopping points and slowing down and telling the story, but it's okay.
Josh, did you catch all that?
I have the Bible in front of me, so I'm obviously catching everything.
Listen, the gist of the story is she came on to him. He said no. She took his robe and framed him. He went to prison.
She lied to her husband. Her husband believed her, and he was arrested and thrown into the king's prison. Obviously a different type of prison than, what was like just a commonplace prison, but he was still thrown into prison for something he didn't do because he refused to sin against God, refused to sin against his master. He was wanting to stay righteous and pure before he had some type of conscience and some type of moral code that he was living. And that's to be attributed to the way he was brought up by his father Jacob and his tribe and his people. Obviously, there wasn't a law at that time that said, sexual immorality is bad. I mean, look at what his brothers were doing. His brothers were not good. His oldest brother was sleeping with his father's concubine. And Judah, you saw that he didn't even flinched at the opportunity to sleep with a prostitute. Like, she got him so easily.
I think it was still bad to sleep with somebody's wife.
I think morally, yeah, because again, even though we didn't have the law, that's one point I wanted to make, there was still the law of morality, which God imprinted on us as his image and inside of our hearts. You don't have to teach somebody, hey, if you sleep with your stepmother, that's wrong. You're doing wrong by your father. So he took it seriously, and you see him kind of developing through these hardships, even though he might have been a little bit more annoying as a kid and might have been kind of a stickler. As he develops, as he matures, that those points of righteousness that he wants to keep, in his life, that desire to prioritize God, because obviously you have to think about it. He's seeing that he's favored. He's seeing that he's able to, even though he's in a terrible situation, he's making the best.
Well, they noticed it, right? They noticed that he was with God,
just like, and that's the thing that's so interesting. Even his father's. Like Jacob with Laban, like everybody around them is obviously witnessing someone who is blessed. It's like, it's undeniable, which is great. Yeah. And ancient Egypt is crazy, and there's so much to it that we're definitely not gonna be able to cover it. And we did do a sidetrack there that was kind of talking about it.
Yeah,
but
that's why I read the whole chapter.
I know.
You guys
No.
For 20 minutes about nothing.
Listen, I'll get into, because I have a couple different tales. That kind of leads into this, because here's the thing. Theoretically, there is no actual proof of Joseph, the name Joseph, in Egyptian history. Okay. Well, kind of makes sense because Joseph is theoretically a Hebrew name. And if that's a Hebrew name, does it correspond with him actually still being called Joseph in Egypt? Because he was probably given a different name or a title that he was now referred to as, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
we know, spoiler alert, later his name is changed, but he was probably referred to as something. But they were calling him the Hebrew, so they knew who they were talking about. But
in the Bible, they were calling him the
Joseph
Hebrew.
In Egypt, they didn't write down like, and Joseph stayed here. You know what I mean? They just haven't found that. They found similar things that they tried, like I said, the characters that they tried to attribute later to, like, this could have been Joseph, but never someone who was definitively confirmed. And
Definitively.
Yeah.
So,
and
with that being said, I'm going to tell the first story. Now, whether you like it or not, I'm going to kind of read a little bit from the Quran. In the Quran, it tells this story. Wait, because it's interesting, to know different styles of why is it different in Egypt. They have a story. In the Quran, they have a story. So in the Quran, it adds a little bit more to the story, which is take it or leave it, false, true. You decide. So in the Quran, they say. So you have the original story where, as we just read, but in it, so after like the wife goes to Potiphar and says, "Hey Potiphar, this is what this guy did. How could you let this Hebrew that you brought to me, that you brought here, completely defile me and everything?" So he asks like, "Hey, let me see the shirt, blah blah." Joseph, like, first off, Potiphar isn't just, he doesn't seem like a complete idiot. So Potiphar goes to Joseph in this story and says, "Hey, Joseph, what's your story? Like, what actually, like, what happened?" Because obviously if he trusted Joseph well enough to let him be in charge of the whole house, I don't think that he would have just said, I'm going to take the word of my wife. Gone. You're gone. He must have known who she really was. But either way, in this story, he asks Joseph's a story of what happened in Joseph's point of view. Joseph tells him that, hey, she tried to seduce me. I said no. She ripped my shirt. He goes, looks at his shirt. He's like, yeah, your shirt is ripped. And he saw that she had the garment, the piece of his garment. So what he does is he actually decides that his wife is the guilty party, and then angrily he tells his wife in front of all the servants to apologize to him and ask for his forgiveness, to Joseph's forgiveness. Now, after this, basically, and I don't know how, but apparently her name is Zalaika, all right? Zalaika, which is the name of Potiphar's wife. Zalaika overhears a group of women talking about the incident and verbally, like, they're shaming Potiphar's wife for what she did. And Potiphar's wife gets so angry that she gives each one of the women a knife and then calls for Joseph. And then when Joseph shows up, the women they all start angrily cutting themselves with knives. And then basically, like, by being shocked by his beauty, apparently. So they're doing it out of, like, in a lustful way. I don't know. It's weird. So they're all just angrily cutting themselves. And then Potiphar's wife is like, we love you. We would do anything for you, Joseph. Just be with us. And then Joseph goes to Potiphar and says, please, just throw me in prison. I want nothing to do with this place. Please put me in prison. So Potiphar puts him in prison out of respect for Joseph, but not because Joseph was actually found guilty. This is the Quran's interpretation of this story.
So that's interesting.
I thought it was hilarious.
Things in there which don't make sense and are kind of contradictory because
he's so hot.
He's like,
cut themselves.
This burden is so great. I'm too sexy for my shirt. Throw me in prison, Potiphar.
Yeah.
And we've talked about how stories are similar, like maybe with the creation story, the flood story, different mythologies and different religions have their own version that are similar.
I mean, that's like, kind of ridiculous.
We could take it ridiculous. We can
so attractive.
Listen, we can take it ridiculous, but remember that was also a very old text. So who knows where they got the text? But we also know kind of where Muhammad gets his things from, and he wasn't. He actually. It was pretty old.
Not as old as the.
Yeah, this is like
not as old as the Bible.
5,000 years after these events.
Yeah,
Muhammad is after Jesus.
Yeah, it's like,
that's true, but
like in the 80s.
You got to remember that I'm not saying that I'm giving credit to other texts as being real. I'm just saying that you got to remember that even Alexandria, right? The Library of Alexandria, that was more of a Persian and area. So with those areas were most likely at like they veered toward that route.
I've never heard that version, so that's interesting. I like where it kind of goes.
There's also a poet.
Interesting, like,
there's also a Muslim poet that actually came out with. I think it's in 1200 AD or something like that. He came out with like this whole love story between Potiphar's wife and Joseph, where they actually like would meet in secret and love each other and everything. And then Joseph kind of just said, wow, I'm done with you. Like I don't want anything to do with you. And then he broke her heart, and then she goes crazy and stuff like that. So, but that's obviously, that's just folklore. Fiction-y. Like that one, it was that. Yeah, that was just fan fiction. But now we get into the Egyptian story. Wait, we have to get through the stories. Now we get into the Egyptian story.
Last version of this story.
Okay, whatever.
Two brothers?
Yes, the story of the two brothers.
Two brothers. So
the story of the two brothers is basically there's an older brother and and he has a younger brother. The parents die.
Wait.
So
they can't be one older, one younger.
What?
I'm sorry. I like the title Two Brothers. All right. I'm sorry.
All right. So there's the older brother and the younger brother. The older brother takes in the younger brother and lets him live with them. So the older brother has a wife, and her name. You know what? I'm gonna forget names. Okay, no names. The older brother has a wife, and they invite. They have the younger brother live with them, and the younger brother is so young in age that basically the older brother becomes like a father to him. So they're working out in the field, and the younger brother is an excellent worker. And I'm obviously paraphrasing all of this, but this is an actual Egyptian text that is in the British Museum of
I got you.
Archaeology.
I
or whatever.
believe you.
Okay, so this is an actual text, very, very old text, and so the younger brother is known to be this great worker. He's farming. He's always with the cattle. Like he makes sure that the food is always on the table, that everything is always done, that they don't need to do anything other than just basically eat and have a good time. Now, one day, the older brother goes out and is helping his younger brother in the field. And the older brother is like, hey, go back to the house. We need some more seed. So go back to the house, get some more seed. So the younger brother goes back to the house. He's looking for the seed. And and the older brother's wife is there. And she's like, she has something against this dude. She just doesn't like him. I don't know exactly why, but she wants to cause strife.
Brother?
Yeah.
She wants to basically split the older and the younger brother. So she basically she gives him the seed. So this is the weird thing, is she actually gives him the seed and then sends him on his way. Now, when the older brother comes back home and the younger brother's out there working, the older brother comes back home and he's like, he doesn't see the fire lit. And it's weird. It actually says this, like, he doesn't see that the fire is lit. He doesn't see that the table is set, because that was her job, to make sure that the house was a home. So he doesn't see that all this is done. So he goes and looks for his wife, and his wife comes to him all bruised and black. She painted herself like completely beaten up. And she's like, your younger brother, he tried to defile me and he beat me. He just beat me senselessly. And his older brother, just out of strife, he grabs a knife and he goes and waits at the stables. And because he knows that the younger brother is going to end up going there. So he goes and he waits at the stables. And I guess when the younger brother was coming to the stables, he opens the door and he sees his older brother there just holding this knife. And then he drops down on his knees and then prays to Ra, which is their version of God. He prays to Ra, and Ra all of a sudden makes a huge river appear between the two brothers, and then there's a bunch of crocodiles there. So now there's this giant river between the two brothers.
This is kind of close to the story of Joseph.
This is nothing like the story of Joseph. This is the longest, not relatable story I've ever heard in my life.
It doesn't even have the character.
So the younger brother listen. So the younger brother,
slave master relationship.
So the younger brother,
you have to finish the story now.
I will. All right. So the younger brother looks at his older brother. He's like, "Why? Why would you do this to me? I did nothing. I see you as a father, and I see her as my mother. Why would I do anything to hurt her?" And then the older brother was like, "Well, I guess I believe you, but out of all of this, I get like." It turns into a wild story. The younger brother ends up cutting off his genitalia. He takes out his heart. He puts his heart inside of a cedar tree. And actually, he becomes.
How does this relate to Joseph?
They become gods. So the older brother actually ends up becoming Anubis, and the younger brother ends up becoming the bull god of Egypt. And yeah, well, he basically turns into, he puts his heart into a tree, and later on, I guess He's still alive. The gods create a wife for him, an Egyptian wife for him, and she's the most beautiful in all the land. His wife ends up leaving the younger brother to be with Pharaoh. Pharaoh tricks her to cut down the tree. So when she cuts down the tree, she cuts his heart out, and then he dies. I mean, it turns into a wild story. But all in all, I'm just saying, like,
I mean, that's actually the closest part to Joseph right there. With the pharaohs involved.
It was just ancient Egypt mythology with Joshua.
Apparently, the story somehow it somehow ties with the Joseph story, because also it apparently happened at the same time.
It definitely didn't.
Well, no, because Josh said that you got to look at a story from different perspectives.
Oh my gosh.
And that's clearly the Egyptian.
Well, even the flood tale, remember? The flood obviously happened, but which one is the correct one? And we have a different versions in every ancient religion and peoples. We have different versions in each one, right? So it's the same thing with this. It's just different twists and different. Not that they're real, but it's different
very
twists.
Different with this.
That's like
Josh.
Right, man, look, the Quran one's different. Like, oh, this is Coke and that's Pepsi.
Yeah, different.
But this story is like, oh, this is Coke and that's
a tree.
Yeah, turkey. Like it's so different.
The only thing they have similar is the fact that a wife lied about being
that's
abused.
You said all that just to say women lie.
They turn into gods and cut out his heart and put it in a tree.
Puts it in a tree.
Ra comes down and makes a river with crocodiles.
Aren't they like the gods in the mummy movies too?
Yeah.
Whatever his name is. Like, it's like a mummy.
Well, it's going to be very important here in the story too in a second. But
what will the mummy?
Gods, the gods. I had a whole section for it, but I'm not even going to put Josh down. That was pretty interesting, though. I didn't. It's not like Joseph at all, but it was.
Well, you got to see where they come from, because here's the thing.
Yeah, to see the point of view, because Moses was taught this. He was educated in these things, and
he believed it,
and that would have been influenced. At one point in his life, he was also raised by his mother, even though he was raised in the palace. But we're going to get into his story. His story is wild that they don't cover. But let's get back to the story. That's enough. Yeah, interesting. So in Muslim tradition, they have a couple extra details that differ from the story. We're going to figure out why those kind of contradict what's in the Bible. And I feel like if it's contradictory, obviously, and again, I'm super biased. I believe that the Bible is more true, but you can take different things and see that it obviously had influences in other parts of, other religions as well.
I'm on Ross St. Brown. Number one fantasy football pickup this year.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. Joseph is in prison. Needless to say, his wife lied on him. His master took his wife's side, even if he was wrong, even if it was right. But he doesn't put him to death, which I think would be more of a appropriate. So there was obviously a struggle there. There was obviously some type of, Josh was right, that relationship to someone that was so important that he didn't just want to put him to death. He didn't want to get rid of him. He had a soft spot still. So he puts him in prison. But we see that even though his situation has gone from betrayed by my brothers and sold into slavery, and then I'm a slave in Egypt, and now I'm in prison, in the lowest of the low, and this is we're going to call this little section of Joseph's life rock bottom. Sorry, that was my fingers.
Before we move on, can I just bring up the fact that Potiphar is probably one of the coolest names so far.
You like that name?
I like Potiphar.
It's a title. It's not even a name.
Okay, nerd. Sorry. I thought it was his name.
I mean, I'm going to call him Potiphar. If you ever watched the DreamWorks movie,
I did.
Which is incredible, which is all the research you need for this episode. I'm just kidding. But he knows. They call him Potiphar, so it's not like his title. But it is a title, I guess. I don't know. Nathan, if you can take us, he's in prison, but the keeper of the prison is also a huge fan. Obviously, I don't really know what he could do to be prosperous in prison. Maybe the regiment, maybe the organization with the inmates and keeping riots and bad things that happen in jail at an all-time low. Maybe people respected him, but he did obviously something where the Lord was with Joseph and showed his mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And
Well-
again, Joseph is made
It's Joseph.
is made in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever he was doing, the keeper did not look. Again, he handled his business so well that the guys that give him position and power trust him to not even look in that direction. They're like, he had no idea what was going on. Joseph's got it.
How good looking was Joseph?
How
that
capable
everybody
was
just,
Joseph?
No, I think it was just his looks. Everybody was stunned by his beauty.
You ever meet a guy that's so good looking, just
That
like,
I
I don't
cut
care.
myself.
I don't know if it was necessary that he was
No.
good looking. I think that people noticed that the Spirit of God was with him. Even going back
yeah.
to the tale of the two brothers, I forgot to mention that the Spirit of God was with the younger brother. It mentions that, so it doesn't say which God. It just says the Spirit of God was with the younger brother, and they all saw it. It was visible. It was very visible. So if Joseph
that's
is even
the best way.
portrayed like this, it seems like Egyptians, when they see that someone is blessed by God and they have the Spirit of God with them, they're revered. They're not seen as a god, but they're seen as divinity. So it could be that even
they recognize-
Potiphar saw it, the guard saw it, and they let him be in charge. Sorry, go.
You're right, because even in other stories, I mean, people have their own gods. Remember with Laban and his gods, Nahor, like he recognized his gods, Nahor's gods, and that this god specifically is powerful and has given Jacob favor. And then here they believe that he has his own gods and that he has favor, and they see that. And so Joseph is in a position of authority while also underneath even being a slave. Like you're a prisoner. You don't even have the freedom of serving. You're like locked away, probably either awaiting some type of imprisonment or some type of execution. But we go on to Genesis chapter 40, which is an extremely interesting chapter. It covers Joseph in his position while also utilizing a gift that he has had his whole life. God is obviously, we've seen how, like his father Jacob, he has not only dreams, it goes a step further. He's able to interpret these dreams. Now, after living and after struggling and after going through some hardship and maturity and I would say character building, I think Nathan alluded to that when we first talked about Joseph, that, oh yeah, he's going to go through some character building. I think being a slave and then being a prisoner could really help someone, either break them down or at least, not make them as arrogant, if you will. But here in this position, he's given this ability by God, and he utilizes it with two specific prisoners that he's kept in charge of. Nathan, if you could read for me the first in chapter 40 of Genesis. Read the first four verses. Let's intro us into it.
It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while.
Mm-hmm. And then it says that you have
a lot of empty dead space right now. You're saying what you have?
No, I'm sorry. I was just thinking, because I'm thinking about these two people. They were kind of like Joseph. I don't know if they were slaves, but they were like in charge of their domain. Like one was a butler, but he was the chief of the butlers. One was a baker, but he was in charge of baker. It's like almost like the higher up you get in that service, the closer you are to the sun, the more likely you are, or the closer you are to fire, the more likely you are to get burned. It's almost like it doesn't tell us what they did. It just says that they offended their lord. Who knows what that specifically could have entailed, but
Maybe he gave him the wrong cup.
Joseph is now. It could be that the chief butler was in charge of more than just cup bearing, and then the chief baker probably was overseeing a bunch of bakers. Who knows? But
Maybe Pharaoh
Joseph
didn't
is
like
in
rye
charge.
bread. Maybe he liked sourdough.
was a lot of nothing I just said.
he probably cooked a bad loaf of bread. Like, I hate this guy. Like, oh, that's how I would be if I was a pharaoh.
My lord, I've been serving you for 15 years.
Well, I hate your bread. Get out of here. Go to prison.
My father loved this bread, but I don't love this bread. I am not my father.
The chief butler.
It just happens to be in the room. And you get out of here, too.
The chief butler's there. But Lord, I don't like you the way you look. Get out of here.
I don't like the way you buttle.
You look fat.
All right, enough silliness. Let's get down to Bible.
So Joseph comes up upon these two guys one morning as guess what he's making his rounds. It really doesn't give us a schedule of Joseph's life. We know that he was in charge of it.
Probably in the Quran.
Or Joshua, if you could give us some more details.
Do they cut themselves over him too? Like,
Wait. They didn't just cut themselves. They angrily cut
Joseph
themselves.
Would be like, oh no, not again.
They couldn't take it.
Why has everybody cut themselves around me?
Just put me in the ground. Then the butler and the baker, they were obviously friends, and Joseph came upon them while they were having a discussion. They each had a dream, and they didn't know the meaning. They were trying to. It says they were trying to interpret in their own interpretation. And Joseph came to them in the morning and said to them, he's like, he saw that they were sad, which is kind of cool on Joseph. It kind of shows that he was also very observant. He wasn't like that attention to detail. Like, imagine being a prisoner that's in charge of other prisoners. How many of you guys would be like really paying attention to the mood? Like, you're also in prison. You know what I mean? Who cares? But he's like, you guys seem a little off this morning. What's wrong? You know what I mean? He comes on them and is like, tell me what's going on. And they told him. And they both had a dream, and they could not figure out what it meant. It was really perplexing to them. And he's like, does not God give the interpretation to dreams? Go ahead and tell it to me. Tell them to me, please. I want to help you. And he gives God the credit for that. So Nathan
said, do not interpretations belong to God.
What did I say?
Tell them, does not God give interpretation to dreams?
That's not correct. Yeah.
Do not interpretations belong to God?
They do.
Tell them to me, please.
So then the chief butler comes up and tells him his first dream, which is from verses 9 to 11.
9 to 11, I get it.
9 to 11.
Then the chief told, I'm just playing. Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and placed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. That's the dream.
That is the dream. Now,
why did you look at me like
that? I thought you were going to read the interpretation too.
You're going to read the interpretation?
Yeah, read it. Right. So Joseph obviously interprets the dream through God's help.
And Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner, when you were in his butler. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For indeed, I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews. And I also have done nothing here that they should put me in the dungeon.
Don't stop. I don't mean to start laughing, but
well, he kind of lays.
I never thought about that before. Like Joseph, like, so this is what you're doing. Help me!
He's like, please, for the love of God, help me! Like at the end of it, he like tells him his life story.
Butler's just sitting there like, no.
The butler's like, what? My dream that meant something? I thought it was just a stupid dream.
He's just like all stoic and given this really responsible interpretation. All of a sudden, he's like, listen, man, you gotta get me out of here.
When the chief baker saw that the interpretations was good.
Oh, yeah, that's the mistake he made right there. He was like, oh, man, that sounds pretty good. You're getting out in a couple days? The vines mean 3 days and squeezing grapes?
He said to Joseph.
Have you ever had a dream like that, by the way? Like, it's just, I've had this dream.
What dream?
Like
the vines,
a chalice, and squeezing things into it and drinking it, and it's like I've had a weird dream like that before. So that's why this part kind of always tripped me out when I read it.
Maybe you've been reading the story too much.
No, this was way before I would really study the Bible. But anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah, now the butler's like, or the baker's like, oh man, this is big.
I had a dream too. So he's like, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. So Joseph answered him and said, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days.
No, that's similar.
Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree.
That's
and
not,
the birds will eat your flesh from you.
That's not similar. That's very different. It's very, very different from the first guy. Notice how Joseph does not break down and ask for help from this other guy while he's out. He just kind of like walking.
Do you think that if that man never told him the dream, that it would have come to pass?
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, what if the interpretation of the dream actually brought it to come forth?
What makes you think something like that? Because
I don't know. I'm just like, maybe thought in action.
It's God. It's God revealing the future or giving you something that you can use to give you discernment for the future. And then it comes, it was going to happen either way. It's just kind of like,
yes, but I think when it's spoken and when it comes into like fruit, when it's spoken into words and actually given an interpretation, which is not just giving an interpretation, but he's almost like telling him a prophecy of what is to come. If he never gave him that prophecy and then just let it just be a dream in that man's head, would it have come to pass?
Yes, because again, it's not the events weren't.
I'm trying to say that the power of words, and the power of speaking something into someone's life. Joseph at that point told him, "This is what's going to happen to you," and then that's it.
Mm-mm. See, the dream was a dream even before the interpretation was given. It was still something sent by God. The only reason that there was an interpretation there was God allowing Joseph to have that gift to put an imprint upon the butler, who then later will first forget, but then will be that person that's able to be an influential voice in the ear of Pharaoh that will get him out of there. But it wasn't like, okay, if a prophecy is not given, does that future not happen?
So, guys,
that's a good question.
It's not a good question, because a prophecy is just something that's supposed to happen anyway, but now you know it. Whether you know it or not, it would still come to pass.
But you don't know that.
It is. It's not. Okay. The events didn't happen because Joseph said they were going to happen. They were going to happen, and the fact that Joseph was made aware of them, that's the divine gift. That's where God came into play, that these are going to happen, and watch it happen. But it wasn't like if he didn't say it, Pharaoh didn't have plan. Like they would have just lived in limbo. Pharaoh would have forgot about them, and they would just stayed in prison.
That's what I'm trying to say. That what if it was a scenario? What if it is a scenario kind of like that, where if it's never spoken and actually put into words, put into real life? I'm not saying that it's not like witchcraft where, but I want to say it's something of kind of the power of the tongue, the power of actually speaking into fruition. That when Joseph gave him the interpretation of the dream, that he spoke it into fruition. Like, this is what's actually going to happen.
I understand where you're coming from, but this isn't a good example of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like, it's not, because again, the events didn't happen because Joseph said them. That takes away from the whole point of what Joseph's gift was. It like just negates it. It just makes it
you're right.
Story. It's the interpretation of the things which we don't understand that were coming to pass. And the coming to pass of it, or the events actually transpiring, is the confirmation behind it. It's not because Joseph was told, or Joseph told that interpretation. Because again, it wasn't Joseph saying it and manifesting it through his words. It was God revealing the mysteries that he showed already. And this is because God knows what's going to happen. But it wasn't like if Joseph would have kept his mouth shut, then that wouldn't have happened. Or any point of that in this story. Like, there are other places in the Bible where, like, when you speak and you proclaim something, that is the power behind it. But this isn't a good example of that.
I mean, Joseph is theoretically a prophet, right? He's prophesying.
He is. I mean, you could say that he's an interpreter.
He's interpreting a dream.
Yeah,
Even prophecies. Prophecies is interpreting the word of God as it's coming to you, right?
Well, the word of God is given to you, and you're saying the word of God.
Yeah,
this was a dream somebody else had,
and there's
not that he had.
There's a reason that
he never had the dream. The prophet gets the word of God himself. The prophet doesn't interpret it from somebody else, whereas he's literally interpreting somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
Yes, he's interpreting somebody else's dream, but with the gift of God coming through him.
Yeah, it's God's revelation through him that allows him to decipher something that was shown to something else. But it doesn't mean that he's getting the prophet, like he's seeing it. He's deciphering what was shown to someone else. And the reason behind that is important because that's literally the catalyst in which God uses to take him out of his lowest point and make him chief of all of Egypt, second in command over everything. Is the fact that now if we go into chapter 41, we see at the end of chapter 40 that both of these dreams, Pharaoh has a birthday. It's a birthday
Listen,
bash,
I agree with
right?
you. All I know is that this man must have been a really bad baker for the Pharaoh to go out of his way.
Because you guys keep going back and forth. What everybody ignores is that this technically showed a plot that the baker had and the Pharaoh figured out. The baker probably tried to kill the Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
And to set an example, the Pharaoh sent both the baker and the butler to prison, knowing that he's going to kill the baker and spare the butler, to make the butler forever scared if he ever thought in the future to poison the Pharaoh himself.
So the baker becomes...
Because he was friends with the baker.
The butler becomes the butcher.
The butched.
No. But, so I made all that up.
Nathan, you've watched way too much Game of Thrones. You need to.
I don't watch That's not from Game of Thrones. It's just from me.
I know, but I'm saying it's like that style of. Like,
it's not that style at all. It makes perfect sense. That's what I would do if I was a ruler. I knew somebody tried to poison me, I'd throw him and his friends in jail, kill the person that tried to poison me, and spare the friend because now I have an ally for life.
And not only that, they were the chiefs. Everybody that works underneath them will also be scared. Like if they get thrown in jail,
will that butler be from now on?
Man,
he will always buttle the right way.
Just straight buttle. Now 3 days pass.
But he will forget about Joseph.
Yeah, 3 days pass, and Pharaoh has a birthday bash. In which case, he makes a feast. But I guess he didn't need any bread or bakery because why does it say it like that? He lifted up the head of the chief baker.
That's a gangster way to say he took off somebody's head.
Yeah, he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Essentially, exactly what Joseph had interpreted him. It happened.
Can you imagine if Pharaoh's like, lift his hand? And they're like, okay, like this. No, keep lifting.
Keep going.
Higher.
Sir, if we released any more, it would attach.
Yes, higher.
Goodness gracious.
Lift it higher.
Oh my gosh.
Left. Alright, I'm sorry.
Joseph's words of interpretation came to pass because they were going to happen anyway. I'm just kidding. Sorry, Josh. But the chief butler did not remember Joseph despite his pleas. Despite Joseph's breakdown before him, like, please don't forget me. The first thing the butler does is forget Joseph.
Immediately forgets him. like he never met the guy. Forgot him, just like Peter forgot Jesus.
Just quick with it, like, I
never met that man.
That's behind me now. And then going into chapter 41, someone else has a dream that needs to be interpreted.
I had a dream.
Yeah,
I hate it when y'all make that sound.
Nathan, in chapter 41, who else has a dream? Not Martin Luther King. Read verses 1 through 8 for us, please.
verses 1 through 8. Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine looking and fat cows. So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a second time, and suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream.
No, it came to pass.
You want me to keep reading?
Yeah, 1 through 8.
Man. Now it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men. And they couldn't put Humpty together again. And Pharaoh told them in his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh.
So Pharaoh has a wild dream that, again, all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty together again.
Oh, come on, don't take my joke.
I know, I just wanted to say it.
All right.
Credit to Nathan. Yeah, so it's interesting to see that Pharaoh has a whole slew of people in his employ whose whole job was it to do this. Was it to like interpret, read the signs, do interesting things, and none of them could come up with it. And it's not until this moment, this very similar situation, this familiar situation, that the butler is like, oh, wait a minute. The chief, I remember he's like, I remember there was a guy one time, a long time ago. Man, what was his name again? You know, like
he was begging me about something to do with how he got there.
Man, he cried a lot. That's all I really remember. It's like he was really crying quite a bit. And he said, I remember my faults this day. And when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me into custody, he told Pharaoh essentially that there was this man that's in prison that interpreted both me and remember that baker that you lifted up his head one time? Yeah. Both of us, he like straight up told us what was going to happen 3 days before it. And he's a young guy. He's a Hebrew guy. He was with us there, and he was the only one that could tell us our dreams. So Pharaoh, in his moment of desperation, because he was so frustrated with the fact that this dream was so vivid and he couldn't remember, he couldn't have anybody interpret it. It says that Pharaoh called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon, and they shaved him, changed his clothing, and he came to Pharaoh. And Joseph stands now before Pharaoh. Well, straight up, probably super skinny, probably malnourished. Freshly washed and like.
Let me jump in here for a little bit, because what's interesting about this whole situation is the fact that Pharaoh brings his magicians to the court, which that's not the weird part. That would actually be extremely normal to give the dream, and they aren't able to do it. So for him to go out of their own belief system to go to another man that believes in a different God than what they believe in, that's the weird part, because Egypt is built off of magic. Magic is basically, Egyptians cannot conceive a world without magic. Their whole world was built off of magic, basically with Ra and Kumarad building and creating everything from the earth. Everything about it was magical. So for the Egyptian magicians to not be able to solve what is going on, and then them using another man under the guise of another god, I would say that's almost kind of like treason. I'm surprised that Pharaoh wasn't killed by his own people at that point. I mean, we got to understand the extremity of the whole situation here, because this is actually a big deal. This is their God being shamed in front of all the people. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, it was kind of showing that they weren't actually anything. They couldn't help you when you need help the most.
Or side twist, which is probably not true, but what if this whole time Joseph is not talking to God, he's referring to Ra? I'm not saying that's probably not real. I'm just, what if? I just can't see Pharaoh inviting another person in saying, hey, let's see what your God has to say, and then putting their God, this other man's God, in front and above all the others.
Yeah, but they do, though. This happens actually multiple times throughout the Bible. Like, this would have been Pharaoh's last resort. This isn't like his first, second, and probably even third choice. Remember, he's exhausted everybody that he knows, and the only people that would have been in his employ would have been the best of the best. And the fact that he's now desperate enough to bring up some dude, and Joseph stands before him, and he doesn't even what if he used Ra, like, to try to be like, oh, the God that you understand as the main God, think of it like no, Joseph stood clearly and was like, it is not me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. It's not me, but this God, my God that I serve, the one God, because they were very clear. I don't know what they were calling him specifically, what word in ancient Egyptian that they would have used that is separate from Ra, but Joseph would have distinguished his God as the one that gives interpretation, the one that does everything for him, especially. And that's what separates Joseph from a lot of other people, and what makes him, quote unquote, righteous, or makes him, an admirable figure and a role model in the Bible, is that even though he should be like completely different, he should be doing whatever he can, he should be conforming and saying all the things that Pharaoh wants to hear, and try to like get him way up. He knows that he knows how to work the system and be in charge, but he is consistent in his reliance on God, and understanding that all that he has is from God.
Unless, as he's speaking, he's like, my God, and they're all just kind of they're all kind of looking at him, like, yeah, he's talking about Ra. Like, that's the God of all gods. Like, he's most likely talking about that guy, Maybe it was that type of situation.
It wasn't abnormal for them to have peoples from different nationalities there as slaves, because that's kind of how you would be a slave. Is usually you're captured in like war, and you're the spoils of war, or you're someone that was taken over, or someone that was, paying off a debt or something like that. Like that concept of other peoples would have been there with people with other gods. So I think they would have known that, when he's referring to his God, he's not saying, because they would have distinguished. There were so many gods, and gods in Egypt was super important. That's kind of how the Pharaoh established and justified his rule, is that he's a direct lineage from the gods.
He was a god.
Yeah, like
Pharaoh was God.
He did that. You're right when you said that they were gods and magicians. The fact that they couldn't answer was so troubling. And this is what's interesting about this. Joseph gives an interpretation, and I'm just going to quickly go through it. It's not I'm not going to have you read, because it kind of repeats a lot of stuff. But
can I just say one thing?
Yeah,
those magicians. Do you think they were just like pulling rabbits out of hats, like?
No, because
like this last week.
Is this your card?
Apparently, if you created a trick of some sort to make it look like magic, that's actually considered a crime, and you can actually be sentenced to death for mocking the gods. That's how serious they took magic.
You have to be really good. You have to be really good at like.
So either David Blaine or bust.
You gotta remember that even when Moses went to Egypt and turned the staff into a snake, what did they do? They also turned and made snakes, right?
Imitated.
Using their magic.
They would imitate. But again, like it did then, and his snake devoured their snakes, and Joseph would be the one that stands there with his God, the true God. He'll be able to give an interpretation, and he'll tell them straight up,
correct.
Hey, those 7 fat cows and those 7 good heads of grain represent 7 years of plenty. Likewise, the 7 skinny cows that eat up the other cows and the 7 bad heads represent 7 years of famine. And he tells them to select a discerning man to have him over the years of plenty, and to take 1/5 of all the things that are of the years of plenty and put them aside for the years of famine. And Pharaoh takes this moment. And again, you're right, Josh. They would have been really good magicians and really good wise men. Why was it that because he answered this dream, why do you think it is that Pharaoh elevated him? So Pharaoh literally goes, for sure, your God is obvious with you. Like, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom this is the spirit of God? Like the spirit of I don't know if he recognized, like you said, he was thinking of probably his God, or he didn't really understand. He probably was thinking like,
well, they had so many gods.
The gods.
Yeah,
exactly. But in so much as God has shown you all this, there is none as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, all my people who are ruled according to your word. Only in regards to the throne will I be greater than you. That's to be elevated. I'm talking about, he got not just a promotion, he was literally like handed the keys to the kingdom because he interpreted and gave a positive like, plan for how to overcome, not only interpret the future, but have a plan for the future.
Well, this goes back to what I was saying before, that the Spirit of God was with him so much that even Potiphar saw it, that the guard in the prison saw it, that they had no choice almost but to let him be in charge, because this man was obviously greater than they were.
So good looking.
And that.
No, I mean, from the research that I did and studying ancient Egypt, when I saw this, because again, what I'm sure other magicians did something that was interesting, or they would have interpreted something before. This wouldn't have been the only time. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So why weren't they immediately promoted to be second in command of everything? The reason is because Egypt, as a nation, as an empire, was completely reliant and was sustained by the Nile River. And success, prosperity was usually hinged upon the economic and agricultural agrarian society of how that river would function. It was so consistent with its rising and falling levels. It would leave like this topsoil that would be perfect for growing. It was so consistent year over year that they could act their calendars. When they say a year, when they say they went over this many months, it wasn't the same months we use now. They were going based off of the ebbs and flows of this river, this Nile River. And for a leader, a pharaoh, to be able to know how the world would turn in terms of like whether or not they'll be prosperous agriculturally or not, that would be the hinge of his entire power. Because if he, again, was considered like a god, and all of a sudden everything is famine, everything is pestilence, everybody's dying of starvation, then obviously the people would turn against him first and discount his divinity and probably take him out. So whenever he saw that Joseph was able to see something that he believed, and he was like, that could be really bad if we don't prepare for 7 years of famine. That could completely take out my entire line, my entire dynasty. That's like, he's like, all right, make him in charge of everything. That was the most important thing for a ruler, is to have that stability. That was where all his power and his wealth came from, was actually the fact that Egypt during famine and the rest of the world was able to remain consistent because of that Nile River. So for them, it was extremely, extremely important. There is actually a story I read about a specific guy who rose to the level of Pharaoh. And I'm not going to go into as much detail as Josh did with his stories, but essentially, like, there was a famine and he rose up in power, took over, and there was like a prophecy he had, like he dreamed about it while sleeping underneath the Sphinx, and it was a whole thing. But it's just, you have to understand that once Pharaoh got wind that, oh my gosh, this is an interpretation, this is obviously a dream from the gods, I believe this, and that does have a meaning, I need this to be taken care of. And when he saw Joseph as a capable, wise and discerning person, he put him in charge. And that's the reason he was elevated to such a length, because God, through the gift of dream interpretation, was able to lift up Joseph out of the prison, out of the lowest of the low. Not only was he not a slave anymore, not only was he not in prison anymore, but now there was nobody in the entire world of Egypt that was more powerful than him. He was given a ring in fine white linens and a gold necklace around his neck. He was put in the second highest chariot, and they would ride around and they would literally say, bow before Joseph. And not only that, he was given a wife of the daughter of the high priest of On.
Guys. Oh.
Why was that significant?
That's significant because, first off, she's the daughter of a priest of a whole city. Pharaoh, knowing this, yeah, but Pharaoh, knowing that this man, from what it looks like, he believes in his God and he's favored by his God. He has a spirit of his God. So for him to give a lady that doesn't believe in Joseph's God and actually is probably very into the culture and very believes very much in their gods, the Egyptian gods. I don't know if it's like a slap to the face or he's trying to by marriage, like, marry these two different cultures and religions and gods together, thinking that if I can marry their God with our gods, that somehow we as the Egyptians, we can be cool with this God now. You know what I mean?
I think that, yeah, I know what you're saying, but I think it was more of a symbol of like, it was like a prize, God uses the marriage to strengthen Joseph's new position as a national leader.
Yes.
Some people would say, because the On was also known as Heliopolis. I'm not going to say that right. It was the city of the sun. It was a central worship center of the sun god Ra that you mentioned earlier. And it was located about 10 miles northeast of modern Cairo. Now, the priests of On were considered to be among the most intelligent and cultured people in Egypt. So, like, having her would have been someone that, like, strengthened his position and probably filled in all the parts where maybe he wasn't as knowledgeable. It was, like, super important. Now, Jewish and rabbinic tradition kind of takes the idea of that once she married Joseph, she adopted his God as her God. And she actually like let go of everything else and was like a help to him more so, without like a mingling of her God and his God, like kind of like you see later with other kings. Like, for example, probably one of the most famous examples would be Solomon, where he would marry a bunch of women and like their gods would come into his house and he would just build them temples. And that was actually a great sin, which separated him from God. But Joseph, we don't see that happening.
And which god did the wife serve? Where's she going?
Ra. An ancient.
Wow.
I had a writing here that someone had written, like an ancient historians, Herodotus, reported that the men of Heliopolis, which is On, are said to have been the most. Nathan, stop it, dude.
Sorry.
Seriously. Are said to be the most learned in the records of the Egyptians. Like, they were the most intelligent, the most academically prestigious. The high priest of On held the title as greatest of seers. So when Joseph married into the family, he joined a social class befitting a national leader. Also implied in the marriage arrangement was Pharaoh's confidence that Joseph too was like a seer or a prophet. So it was like, that's why he was given to her, because she had that same class of, in the society, they were like the seers, the prophets, the wise ones, the intelligent ones. And so he's like, obviously you should marry her, and that's the perfect fit. And then now you guys can rule my nation. And the only thing that is you won't have any control over is like matters of the throne. But everything else, nothing can be done or said in Egypt without Joseph say so.
Now, do you think now that Joseph is married to a priest's daughter, and obviously she's a believer of their ways, do you think that Joseph, I don't know how to say this, but did he recognize their gods publicly?
No. I think he was pretty consistently worshiping his own God, because that was, even if you take away the side of whether it's right or wrong, I'm stepping out of like Bible thing, like that's his whole thing, his whole shtick. Like, that's what he's known for, is having the God that's different than your gods, that can do things your gods can't do. Like, that's his claim to fame at this point. Like, that he's different than the other magicians and the wise men. Like, when he's known as the Hebrew with his one God that is able to interpret when others can interpret, is able to give wisdom, and look at what his God did for him. He took him from being a slave prisoner to second in command of all of the empire of Egypt. You know what I mean? So it's like for Joseph, even if he wasn't, a follower and he wasn't someone who lived righteously, it'd be dumb for him to like then just start mixing and adopting, and like what makes him special, what makes him different at that point,
Yeah.
I think the way the Egyptians probably looked at Joseph is that Pharaoh had the dream, and like Pharaoh was able to have a person to interpret. Like they probably looked at Joseph like, oh well, the God's serving us because it's rescuing us in our kingdom. They didn't realize that it's actually God's raising Joseph up to in the future save his people.
Yeah.
Which
we haven't even gotten there.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten there. I don't know if we're going to get there in this episode, but the reason why Joseph was elevated to this position of power and prestige was because God so loved his people that he used a very different way to rescue his chosen people from famine. And I think the Egyptians were looking at Joseph like, well, his God is serving Pharaoh because Pharaoh had the dream. And God lets people believe stupid things if you let, God's not going to try to change. But at the end of the day, God was the true God. And maybe there were some Egyptians that saw that, like they made a note of that, maybe there weren't. I don't know.
Well, you have to look at it like this too. When Pharaoh also raises him up, he changes his name from Joseph or whatever they were calling him to Zaf.
Yeah, he had to. He couldn't let him be called Joseph because then I would give credence to Joseph's God.
Zapna Paneah. That word means, or that name means, he deciphers the hidden. Now, another reason for Pharaoh raising up Joseph to such a high level and giving him this responsibility, I think, and it's something I was just thinking about earlier, it's kind of giving Pharaoh like a scapegoat if everything doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Like if he doesn't have a solution.
But that's like
that's
what kings do.
That's what happens in the end of this chapter. It's like, okay, the chapter's ending with the 7 years of plenty, which in the land of Egypt, the 7 years of famine began, or when they had ended, the 7 years of famine had become. And Joseph said the famine was in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. So when the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And what does Pharaoh say?
Go to Joseph.
Go to Joseph. You know what I mean? Like, if this was like the whole thing, like if he wouldn't have had a salute, like if it didn't work out, Pharaoh would have been able to like take out Joseph and be like, it's his fault, not mine. Look what we can do. And then probably like tried to salvage and kind of keep his position. But God, of course, preserving Joseph for the reason of having bread in this time of famine to save his people, didn't let that, happen. But that's kind of where the story we're going to end on this episode is. The 7 years of plenty come. Joseph does what he said he's going to do, marries this priestess, and actually has two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim.
Do you think,
and Manasseh.
Since we're talking about the 7 years of plenty, how did they store all of this? Right?
I don't know. There's like, the
pyramids,
grain storage.
Actually, no.
Yeah.
Well, no, because here's
grain.
the thing. There's for a long time, the pyramids. I'm not going to say like the Great Pyramids that we see, but a lot of the pyramids were kind of constructed and widely believed that they were constructed by the Pharaoh under the rule of Joseph for these exact years. Because you got to imagine, they stored a lot of grain, 7 years worth of grain. I mean, what you said, 1/3, right? A third of the grain, a fifth of all the grain. But that's still a lot of grain that they had to store up. And
and grain is like not easy to store. If it gets like wet and moldy, it's like, could do things like, create psychedelic.
I'm sure they
poison.
probably built grain storage facilities too. It's not like they probably were. This was like an ongoing task.
But what was the best way for them to keep something dry and secure that way? Was what with the pyramid?
When I was watching the DreamWorks,
Maybe.
Joseph King of Dreams, they had these little tube thingies that they built, and they were pouring them in. And when they filled up, they put little pharaoh heads on top. They would close over, and that's where they.
Very simplistic one. I mean, you never know. I mean,
The pyramids are empty with giant chambers of like nothing in them. You know,
they're not complete. I mean, the pyramids are
empty.
constructed in weird. Like, we don't know enough about how the insides of the pyramids are. Like,
let me tell. I know exactly. I could like map it out on the paper for you right now.
Sure, you can.
Okay, you want to test me,
dude? Be quiet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, for real.
I'll say.
I'm not saying they didn't put it in pyramids, but like you could say that, but I don't think that's necessarily.
No, I know.
They probably built grain storage facilities.
I've never heard that the pyramids were built by Joseph. I've heard that they were built by like maybe.
Oh no! I mean, that's actually like a huge. They would make pilgrimages just on that actual thing, like in from anywhere from the 300s AD to basically the 1200 AD, like. That became a huge pilgrimage for a lot of Christians and a lot of believers to go see the pyramids. And they would say that these are the pyramids where Joseph had the granaries. And there was an actual belief that the pyramids were still full with grain until somebody went in there.
It's not true.
It's obviously not true.
Somebody went in there. Yeah, it was empty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somebody went in. They went in there. They saw that it was empty, but they also knew that the kings were buried there, so they became tombs for the kings. And also, an Arabian traveler in basically like the 900s AD wrote a pretty interesting kind of like a book on the geography of kind of where the pilgrims were. And he's saying that some of the reports of the pyramids are saying that they are tombs, but he's saying it's false. Rather, the builders had foreseen the flood, and they knew that this cataclysm would destroy everything on the face of the earth, with the exception of what could be stored in the safety of such buildings. And they hid their treasures and their wealth inside of it. And when the flood came, the waters dried up, and all that there was left was the two pyramids that basically were still there. That passed to Banser, son of Mizram, son of Ham, son of Noah. So basically, the son of Ham.
Don't forget the Sphinx.
Yeah, don't forget the Sphinx.
Canaan.
Well,
the Sphinx has like signs of water erosion on it. That's like a thing about it too. Like it was obviously like rained upon.
They discovered that the Sphinx is way older than the pyramids.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like the Sphinx.
The pyramids are 50 cubits deep.
The head doesn't match like the rest of the body, and like what they just kind of put a head on it that is clearly differently structured and crafted than like the rest of it. Not only that, the pyramids, the more and more they do research and the more modern understanding on the building of the pyramids is that it was more than likely done with like skilled paid laborers as opposed to like slave labor or something that was forced or something that was done in haste. It was something that was planned and done very professionally, obviously, because it was lasted so long.
Could have been by Joseph.
Was it done before the flood? Could be. I don't know if it was Joseph. It's probably not, but you know.
Well, Joseph, there's enough study out there to say that Joseph used pyramids as granaries. Not the pyramids that we go and see, but smaller pyramids that were probably like, but he used pyramids because pyramids, they were extremely well built, very dry inside. They kept everything dry inside. And that's one of the main things that you need for grain if you're trying to store it and trying to keep it from having mold and all that stuff.
Why not do a silo? That's what we do today with like corn and grain. Like it doesn't take hard to.
A pyramid basically is a silo.
Way more. It's not,
No,
though.
it's not, but
It's a
the-
completely different shape.
Yeah, it would
There's
make
a
more sense for them to build like a
long
It's a
tube.
triangle. Well, they just everything they built seems like they like triangles. Okay, so they built triangles.
I don't think that's true.
Ergo,
We in America
the
we
Great
build
Forces were
we
triangles.
build squares. Okay, so we build squares. The Egyptians build triangles. The Arabs
Romans,
they build circles,
they do
just
those
like
little
big
arches.
mushroom buildings.
he's got a point there.
I
They
mean,
do build
no,
mushroom
dude, because the
buildings.
Egyptians didn't just have pyramids. That's not the pyramids were special. There was something different. Nobody was living in the pyramids back then.
They were
There wasn't like
tombs.
mini pyramids down a whole neighborhood
They
of
were-
like mini pyramids.
They
down
were
the street.
tubes.
It was for just homes. I don't know.
They were tombs for kings. Okay.
What type of tomb
I'm not saying I'm not
needs to be
disagreeing that they might
50
have built
cubits
pyramids
deep?
to store
That's
granaries.
basically like
Listen.
150 feet deep.
If I'm a god king, you're putting me in a pyramid.
Yeah, but that pyramid, no way it could be finished in the life of a king. Those pyramids, theoretically, if they were built by humans, they took a lot longer than just 60 to 70 years to build.
Listen, you'll
Unless-
have bones over
They
here.
didn't
Unless they
believe
were-
that the
they were
pharaohs-
built
that's why they
by
embalmed them.
Nephilim.
They believe that the pharaohs didn't necessarily die. They believe that they were always. That's why they embalmed them and mummified them.
Mhm.
That's the way that they lived forever.
Dum, 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 dum.
Could
But
their
anyway,
body
that's
be
neither
kind of like the genie in the lamp, where it always needs a place to go, but their spirit will wander?
Yes. I think so.
Like Robin.
So if you rub their body,
R.I.P.
the genie will come out.
That's why. Do you know that so many mummies were eaten by like European that would like drink it thinking it was like medicine? Like their powder of like mummified Egyptian corpses was like so popular to ingest in like England and like France and like these places.
Man, I don't know how we're gonna get to the greater meaning of this one. Like, how we're gonna loop back around.
Hey, real quick before we finish the
Yeah,
story,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
do
yeah,
this.
yeah.
All right. So in this land, in the time of prosperity, it's important to note the two sons that Joseph has because they are extremely significant to the future of the Israelites, even though they're Joseph's sons, born with an Egyptian wife, Ephraim and Manasseh. Manasseh's name means, "For God has made me forget my toil of all my father's house," meaning that at that point, Joseph had finally come to the point where he's like
Forgotten all the toil in his father's house.
all the sadness he had from the separation and the pain he had gone through. By the time he has Manasseh, God has lifted him up. And let's mention that the Bible tells him that he's about 30 years old at the point when he was 30 years old whenever Pharaoh made him in charge.
He's 30, so then 37,
That's
and
nuts.
then 40 something.
And then Ephraim means, "For God has caused me to be faithful in the land of my affliction."
44.
So it's two things named to kind of signify Joseph's mindset and where he was at that point.
Since you explained what "for God has made me forget all the toil in my father's house" meant, can you explain what "for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction"?
It's pretty self-explanatory on that one.
Oh,
You know, he's pretty fruitful
And-
as
And let's
in the land
let's
of
not
his
forget
affliction?
in the land of his.
I just thought it was funny that you explained the first one, which is very
Supply and
self-explanatory,
demand.
too.
Oh, yes.
you see
So let's go into the
Jo-
greater meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pharaoh
Oh,
bought up
let him
all
go.
the grain at probably super low prices because of how much of a supply there was during the years of plenty. So he's buying them at super low cost. And then in the 7 years of drought and when nothing's growing, he's selling it super high back to the people that he bought it from. Talk about inflation.
Wait, I was thinking about this. Wouldn't it be the opposite? It's like super expensive whenever there isn't as much of the good one.
No,
And
no.
whenever
When
it's
there's a
plenty,
lot
it's,
of
like, not as expensive.
when there's a lot of something, it's cheaper. When there's not a lot of something, it's more expensive.
Wait, can I say it a different way? The same thing?
Oh my gosh, please. Yeah, there was just like BlackRock is buying up all the land and properties today. The same thing was going on back in ancient Egypt. The powerful oppress the poor. Shocker.
So you got to watch to see what the people in power are buying, so that you can also buy what they're buying.
I have not. Yeah.
The trick to making money in stocks is you buy high and sell low.
This is absolutely financial advice.
All right, let's get to the greater meaning, guys.
Yeah, I can't even see how long we were recording.
We got to wrap this up.
I have no idea how long we've been going. My greater meaning is to be very simple and short.
It never is.
It is, and it's going to be, even though you can't see me anymore. God is faithful. I think I've said that before. It's pretty much the easiest greater meaning that you could say, but Joseph distinguishes himself from amongst his brothers. They were all born of the same father. They were all lived in the same tribe. I'm sure that Jacob would have carried himself the same way, even if he did favor Joseph. I heard a sermon about a Sunday ago. It was a guest speaker, and he came, and he's a missionary, and he brought about the story of Daniel and his three friends when they were taken in captivity into Babylon. And Daniel famously, in his story, when he's taken to Babylon, he makes a commitment. It says he purposes in his heart that he will not defile himself with the items sacrificed to idols of the king's food or anything like that. And he was a young man, just like Joseph is a young man sold into slavery and he was 30 years old by the time he was given the keys to the kingdom. Where did Daniel and his three friends learn this? It would have started at home. It would have started with his family, with his parents. It would have started with the lessons he learns from his father. But it's up to him to purpose in his heart. It's up to him to decide to stay faithful to his God that's faithful to him. His other brothers, in contrast, obviously make mistakes after mistake, and they don't do that. And they kind of toil and they struggle, and they're probably living not in the same way. So we see that even though Joseph was given terrible circumstances, God allowed him to prosper in that because he stayed faithful, because he stayed righteous, and because God's divine plan in the end, his providence, will be the thing that speaks in the end, that will carry success in the end. So if you just take care of your part, God gives us his rules, his laws, and he puts them in our heart, and he tells us how we should live and what we should do. We know what we need to do is stay pure, stay separate from the things of this world. If we do our part and rely on God, even if it might mean that we're not as popular, even if it might mean that we don't gain favor with our boss or our coworkers or our people in school or our colleagues or our classmates, in the end, remaining faithful to God and staying righteous and trying to strive for purity, even if that means you have to run away and have your shirt torn, that is going to lead to a greater blessing. And having God on your side is greater than having any Pharaoh, any master of a house, any rich family or lands and possessions. It doesn't matter what the world can throw at you. If you have God on your side, in the end, his word is going to be what is spoken, and it remains dominant over your life. That is my greater meaning.
Was not short.
It
That was
shorter than
not
usual.
short.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Wow.
Josh.
I don't
Way to
even know
take
what.
all of the themes and the whole thing.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
At first.
I'm going to speak from the Quran. I'm
That's
joking.
why the skilled guy
Josh,
goes
you're not
last.
speaking from the Quran no more. I'm just kidding.
I guess my greater meaning with this portion of the story would have to be probably the cupbearer, the great butler
He's the chief butler.
of old. Well, in some versions it calls him the cupbearer, and in this one it calls him the chief butler. But with this guy, how God worked kind of like a miracle in his life. He gave in prison when he had this dream. He gave this guy security through the interpretation that Joseph gave him. So this guy now he comes back into power, And then he completely forgets Joseph, completely forgets what God has done in his life. Something that was huge. He brought him out of captivity completely and elevated back to a position of power. And this position of power isn't just like he's just a butler. He was a chief butler. He was in charge of all the other servants in the court of Pharaoh. That's huge. That's a big rise. And it kind of like hits home, and it kind of hits to how we are as people. Is God will do something miraculous in our lives. He'll save us from accidents. He'll save us from jalapenos. Who knows? But then we so easily forget these. I'm saying jalapenos because Andrew yesterday almost died from a jalapeno. and then he was miraculously saved. But yet the ambulance did not want to hear it. But even we, all jokes aside, even we as people, like as Christians, as believers, how quickly we forget what God has done in our lives. So this is kind of like what's going on with the cupbearer, and this is my greater meaning that remember this stuff. I say write it down. If you have a dream, if you have something that happened in your life that's huge, write it down so that you can go back to it and you can remember. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so you both kind of took one meaty chunk and the other one took the other meaty chunk. So
you love to go last.
Yes, I do. Because my greater meaning is this. Let's not look at the circumstance that Joseph found himself in, because obviously he was in very dire circumstances. One thing that Joseph never took credit for himself was the fact that he never said, "I'll give you the interpretation of the dream." He always brought up that God gave you the dream. God will, this is the interpretation. It's very easy in life, like if you go through some tough circumstances, and let's say you make through it, right? You make it through the tough circumstances, and you're on the other side of that now. Like if you're ever in some hardship, and let's say financial strain, or physical, or depression or mental, and you make it to the other side of that, it's very easy a lot of times to kind of forget who actually helped you get through that circumstance, right? who gave you the capacity to make it through a circumstance. One thing that I heard a long time ago that really made me kind of change my perspective on how I should live my life and if I should take credit for anything actually that I do. Somebody once told me that you should thank God every day that God gave you a mind capable of understanding the Bible, capable of even being able to talk. Because there's people born with a mind that they're not able to do anything. But you are blessed because you're able to understand and you're able to pray and you're able to do all these things. Never forget to thank God. Thank you, God, for giving me the ability to things that we take for granted, like easily walk, easily talk, comprehend, understand things. God gave Joseph a lot of pretty substantial gifts. I mean, besides the fact that he was a handsome person, he was very mentally capable. I mean, he was sharp. It was noticeable by everybody that something's different. But he always said that it was God. It was very easy for Joseph to be like, "Hey man, I'm like the smartest person in the room and I could tell you what's happening." But he never did. He always he was very, I look at Joseph as a very humble character because he was greatly humbled in his life. Because he was a little bit arrogant when he was young, but God humbled him so much to the point where now every time he opens his mouth, he says, "Well, God, this is what God is telling you." And that's a very key lesson to take in our lives today, especially today. because we're in a culture where, we're supposed to be mentally strong and we're supposed to, just keep grinding, man, and you'll achieve. And we applaud achievement like it's this big thing to like always have more and more and more and more stuff, more elevation, more success. And it's like, where does God fit there? Where does God fit in all this self patting on the back, all this celebration that we won? You didn't win. The only reason you're able to get up in the morning is because God blessed you with the ability to get up in the morning. The only reason you have that next breath that you just had is because God didn't close the lungs, didn't close your throat. The only reason you're able to even listen to this and understand and comprehend things is because God gave you a mind that's capable of listening and understanding and comprehending things. So that is my greater meaning.
There you have it. Joseph Part 2. Thank you so much for everybody that's been listening. Thank you for those that have been following. If you like us and you want to support what we do, please don't forget to give us a like. Give us that 5-star review. Share us with your friends, with your family. Follow us on all platforms. Spotify. We're on Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. We have an Instagram now. It's Greater Meaning Podcast.
It's a bunch of pictures of stuff.
It's posted. We post our episodes when they release. We make posts on them, and we're going to be making some other cool things on social media. Facebook coming soon, other reels and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. Follow us on Instagram. That's
the Byzantine Empire were also used pyramids for granaries.
Thank you, Josh.
Interesting. I'm not disputing it. I said
I'm not saying it wasn't used for granaries. I'm just saying it wasn't used for granaries.
I think it was. I said that. I was the first one to say it. Like, because there's big open chambers.
All right, guys. Have a good
we're
rest of your morning or afternoon or night.
We're still talking about ancient Egypt, Nathan.
Yeah, granaries. It's a thing. Look it up. They were granaries. It kind of makes sense, though. It kind of makes sense. I mean, think about it. Egypt being so large, they have this place that they store all this grain. It's kind of like a huge silo for the whole city.
The grain.
The granary conversation has to end, Josh.
We have to end it here.
Okay. They stored it in the trees. Okay, the trees were the granaries, all right?
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Can't wait for you guys to have us on the next one. We are actually going to be finishing the book of Genesis, ending the story of Joseph and Jacob. It's going to be absolutely a huge milestone. I'm excited. Can't wait for you guys to listen. We're going to have awesome intro music.
One book down, in a garage. So much more to go.
65 more books to go.
Yes.
Actually, no. We've done Job.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we've
64 books to go.
2 books down. Hey, all right. Thank you for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.